All your base Chris.
Hello, All Your Base Chris here with another one of those funny videos. This one is about the ZX Spectrum. I'm going to be using a Mister to simulate the ZX Spectrum, and more precisely, I'm going to be using the Mister's simulation of the ZX Spectrum to play some of the really bizarre true 3D games that the Spectrum had. This is obviously totally different to the isometric games like Head Over Heels, which I'm going to skip over. But before we get into that, this next bit, I've decided to do something different and explain how the original 8-bit systems and other computers could display 3D graphics on a 2D display. This section is a little bit technical and could be quite boring, so if you want to skip over this and move over to where I start playing the games, I obviously wouldn't hold that against you. Right, are we still here? Excellent, then we shall begin. So, what we have in front of me here is Blender. Blender is a 3D modeling program, and it is a good way of creating 3D objects in 2D space. Obviously, a monitor is two-dimensional, it's flat, like a piece of paper. So we're going to simulate a 3D object here. So, if you want to create a 2D object, then you need two coordinate points. You need an X and a Y. So the X is how far along something is, and a Y is how far up it is from an origin point, which in this case would be 0. If you have more than one of these points in space, you can then connect them with lines. And where the lines intersect, we call a vertex. Are you with me so far? Great. If you then use those coordinates, you can basically create a picture using nothing more than a list of numbers. So you have your points in space, the vertexes if you like, and then you have the lines going between them. So with simply four sets of two numbers, you can create a square, as you can see in front of us. What gets more interesting is if you then add the Z dimension to it. So you have the X, which is across, the Y that is up, and then you have the Z, which is in. So in a situation like that, you then have three coordinates for each point in space, a vertex, if you like, because then you have the length, the width, and the breadth, and you can go all the way back in. So we have here a square, but it's actually a cube, and the reason it looks square is we're looking at it straight on. So now if I click here, we now have a 3D representation of a cube. This isn't really 3D, it just looks like it's 3D because the computer is doing some tricks to make this look realistic. And of course we can move around and look at it from all these different angles here, zoom in and out. So all this really is, this is being done with math. So the computer is calculating where to draw these lines based on rotation of the camera around it. And that really is the crux of how all of these 8-bit computers could make 3D graphics. It's a cheat. That's right, it's a cheat. It's all to do with perspective. What we have in front of us, this is what we call a wireframe. So a wireframe is basically, it looks like an object that's made out of thin bits of wire. And a lot of the early 3D games used this method of rendering 3D objects because it was fairly computationally simple. Hello, please excuse that jump cut there. Had something happen and I had to deal with it. Not important, we'll not get into it. So the next phase along from wireframe graphics is when you have 3D filled graphics, or shaded polygons as they are often referred to. And that is where they remove the hidden lines from the wireframe and then they colour in the faces of the object a solid colour. This really makes it look much more solid, and quite a lot of the later 3D titles use this method to make the games look more realistic. Obviously, today's 3D accelerator cards are an order of magnitude more powerful than any kind of 8-bit microcomputer of the day. And that's when you get things like texture mapping, where you can have coloured items and reflectivity, and even real-time ray tracing, such as I can do with my little graphics card here. And that means you get such wonderful things as real-time reflections, bump mapping, that sort of thing. And it really makes everything seem much more realistic. So yeah, that's basically how computers do 3D graphics. But that's enough of this jibber jabber. Let's have a look at this in practice. So, over to the Mister. Okay, so here we are in the Spectrum core, And we're going to go for... I've got a little list here of games, and we're going to go for one of the earliest ones on this list, which is a game called Ant Attack. So, this one was a hybrid of 3D filled polygons and sprites, and it's isometric. Am I a girl or a boy? Well, it doesn't matter. Let's go. Let's be a girl. Fulfill a lifelong dream. So yes, here we are. Jump. Spin on the spot for some reason. My hero. Take me away from all of this. And I certainly will once I finish wrestling. Oh, here comes an ant. Quick, go. Congratulations. And we all almost got eaten twice, but no problem. Right, so yeah, Ant Attack. Again, for the time, it was really, really impressive. Right, next game. Okay, this one is not in 3D. Is a joystick connected? Yes. Is it an AGF joystick? No. Is it a Kempston? Yes, it is. Oh, hang on. Let's make sure that yes, it is a Kempston. Yes. Do I want a demonstration? No, I know how to play this. What speed is required? Slow. So, this is another one of those absolutely crazy Spectrum games that if you don't know what's going on, you'll never, ever know what's going on. So, is this a cheat? Maybe. Anyway, if you don't know what's going on, this is like, if you remember the film Tron, and you've got that light cycle sequence, well, this is that, but in 3D. So, the blocks that are flying past are trails left by other players in the game, or I think the ones that I'm flying past are mine. And when you use the joystick, it flips between the 4 primary views. It's like it's a very jerky movement. It's not a smooth movement. But, you know, what it does have is that feeling of speed, which is, again, impressive for something that's running at 3.5 megahertz. So is it real 3D? I don't know. I think maybe you could argue this is, again, not exactly 3D, but it's another one of those crazy games that you used to see there. Alright, so, okay, let's move on to the next one. Right, this is a classic. The classic game Elite, as made famous by David Braben. Let's get out of here. While we're at it, let's adjust the... There we go. So yes, Elite, classic. Ooh, that's caused some trouble. I don't like the way he was looking at me. So what do you reckon? 3 frames per second? No, not even that. So one thing I wanted to point out about the Mr. Core is you can actually speed it up a little bit. So now we're running twice as fast as the stock Spectrum. Oh, no. Oh, I've upset the locals. Yeah. Or, if you don't want to go twice as fast, you can go 3 times as fast. Right, dead. Okay, let's reset. Let's reset the Spectrum back to stock speeds, and we'll move on to the next game. Okay, here's the next one. Eye of the Mask. Again, Sandy White. Second appearance by this developer. 1985. Joystick option, yes. Kempston, yes. And S to start. Let's go. And here we have some filled polygons. I Iron Mask. Good luck. Excellent. Come on, let's go. Oh, ah. Answers on a postcard, ladies and gentlemen. Did I win? Maybe? I had a dream like this once. Yes. Oh. Right, okay. Let's see how this runs if we speed up a bit. Go Oliver. Anyway. And now I feel like doing an Aphex Twin video. Great. Technically very impressive. Haven't a clue what's going on. So this next one is the unfortunately titled Fat Worm Blows a Sparky, which is a top-down collect 'em up. Which has you running around the insides of an actual Spectrum as a fat worm. As you can see, we have real filled polygons here. Let's speed up a little bit. They are twice as fast as turn it into like a high-speed action game. Do you remember when you used to play your old Spectrum games and you're probably a bit too young to read the manual and you didn't know what was going on? Did it feel like this? Right, well I don't think I've collected any Sparkies and I'm definitely not as fat as I was. Fat Worm Blows a Sparky, ladies and gentlemen. Possibly the best title so far. The best game title. I wouldn't necessarily call it the best game. And then so the next one is the Sentinel. Jeff Crammond, the legendary Jeff Crammond, and this one was from, let's have a look, 1986. We're gonna double the speed on this one to make it a little more palatable, because this is quite a crunchy game, heavy stuff. So the premise of the Sentinel is you have to get higher on the landscape than the Sentinel and then absorb it. So let's make a boulder. Da-dun. Let's make a robot. And let's move over to the robot. I think it's A. No, A is absorb. Z, maybe? Q. There we go. So now I've teleported into the other robot. So that's the robot I was just in. It makes sense, trust me. And at the top of the screen we have the energy bar. So I've got enough energy to create 2 robots and a boulder. But you can also absorb other energy on the map. And due to the conservation of energy law, any energy that's removed you take, obviously, if you get killed or anything you have absorbed, it gets redistributed around the map or something. Go. Where is the sentinel? There. Right. So the sentinel slowly rotates, and if it can see you, then it'll start draining your energy and attempt to absorb you. So let's put a boulder there and a robot. Oh, I'm being seen. I need to get across to the other. There we go. And now I should face the... See the robot I was in then? I was being absorbed by the sentinel. So it goes from like robot to boulder to tree. But I managed to get some of that energy back. Right, so now let's... I'm being seen again. It's going to start taking my energy away. Right. So boulder. Robot. Let's get out of it. Obviously the boulder on the robot is to make myself higher. Right, I have enough energy to make 1 robot. Isn't enough to defeat the sentinel, I don't think. Because you have to put a robot on the sentinel's pillar. So let's get some more energy. Right, I have enough 1 boulder. I'm practically on top of the sentinel there. Right, okay, so boulder. Oops, change the colour there. No. Sentinel's facing that way. So let's try a boulder there instead. Oh, I don't have enough energy for a robot. Quick, I need a tree somewhere. There. Absorb that robot. And then you can absorb the sentinel if you're high enough to... There we go, that's the sentinel there. Absorb. I get him before he gets me. Controls aren't responding. Of course. Got him. And then we place the robot on the sentinel's place. And now I'm on the sentinel's pillar, and now here H, I hyperspace out of the level, and level complete. Yeah, so that's the sentinel. Right, okay, let's move on to the next game. So this is Mercenary. This was very ambitious. Mercenary was from 1985 by Paul Wokes and Novagen, I think. Now this was very ambitious, this particular game, because they decided to recreate an entire planet. Did have a couple of sequels. Where I had a direct sequel called Mercenary Escape from Targ. And then there were some other sequels such as Damocles, which came out on 16-bit systems and recreated an entire solar system. And then of course we had Mercenary 3, which was the same. So this obviously stuck with wireframe graphics and recreated an entire city. I crashed, did I? Crash landed on Targ. Okay, so here we go. So let's have a fly around in this Dominium dart. So again, this is trying to be as fast as possible. And crash. Message from Polyars. Job offer. So don't forget, I mean, this looks very crude by today's standards, but to recreate an entire city, really impressive. Beware the Atari logo. Let's see what happens if we double the speed here a bit. There we go. So that's Mercenary. So this is Total Eclipse by Incentive Software, using the Freescape engine. And as you can see, I mean, it looks very ugly by today's standards, but we do have filled polygons. And it is a real world. So this game obviously came out on 8-bit and 16-bit. Looks quite a bit better on the Amiga and the Atari ST. And it's pretty slow. That's a plane, by the way. So that's just for fun. Let's double up on the speed here. There we go. We now are going to go into the pyramid. You need water, you see. And what was amazing about these games is obviously you had complete 3 dimensions, so you could look up and down, left and right. While they weren't, again, not the prettiest, but I can't remember, this was back in where was this? 1988. We've come a long way since then, baby. Yeah, the premise of Total Eclipse was you've got a time limit, you need to do something rather, and otherwise the world will end. Or it'll blow up the moon or something. Something weird had happened. But Total Eclipse. So the follow-up to Total Eclipse was a game called Driller. Or Driller was the first one. I can never remember. I believe Driller was the first one. And this one is space-themed. You are a tank. And the idea is you need to vent gas from an artificial moon to stop things blowing up. And you have to try and figure out the best place to put your driller rig. So I think, yeah, the D. There we go. So now I've created a rig, and it says there's no gas there, so that's obviously in the wrong place. But yeah, again, pretty hard to see, but got to remember, I mean, that the ZX Spectrum was not really designed for this sort of thing. What was clever about this game was you had 2 vehicles you could transfer between. You had the tank which could drop the derricks. You had the tank that could drop the derricks, and then you had like a shuttle that could fly around. because this came with a map, and which you could a three-dimensional map, no less. Oh, I've fallen off the edge of the map here, and the map you could build into a 3D image, and you could mark off where you want the derricks on. It was great, man. Next game, Carrier Command. This one, 1988. So obviously, Carrier Command, you are in control of a big old aircraft carrier, and you have to basically capture islands. Where are we? It's another one of those full 3D games. I played this to death on the Amiga. Did not realise there was a Spectrum port of it. I did own a Spectrum back in the day. But, so interestingly enough, the Amstrad, I believe, had a 3D version of this, as did the Spectrum and the Amiga and all the 16 bits. But the Commodore 64 did not have a 3D version. It did have a version of the game, but if I remember correctly, it was in 2D. So we want to go over to here, don't we? Right. No, I don't want to surrender. Never surrender. Never explain. Right, let's turn on autopilot. Vehicle infitting. Let's just put something on this. Right, okay, there we go. And Walrus and dock. And opening dock doors. Launching Walrus. Walrus has run out of fuel. Oh dear. I'm not very good at this, am I? So again, full 3D. Middle to fire, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. So I mean, yeah, it's pretty painful if I'm honest. Let's see if it's better when you speed it up. Doesn't appear to make much difference. So yeah, Carrier Command. Not a terrible port. Looks hideous. So now let's look at something really special. So for our final trick, hard driving. An arcade, well, it's an impossible arcade port. Even the 16-bit systems couldn't really do this one justice. And so Domark decided it wanted to go on every system, and here it is on the Spectrum. And while this is a bad port, it is infinitely better than the Commodore 64 version of this game. So, Kempston joystick. Let's drive on the left, because I'm one of those British people. Right, okay. Hard driving is a revolutionary driving simulator. Yes, great. Move on. Let's just go automatic for now. Turn key to start. Right, here we go. How many frames per second? Half? Maybe one? Yeah, 1 frame a second. So yeah, I mean, it's still polygons, it's full 3D. hey. I mean, it's practically uncontrollable if I'm honest. What I'd like to point out though, this is a great achievement. Because, speed-wise, when you consider like how games like Total Eclipse ran, oh, watch out. When you consider how Total Eclipse ran, this is running slightly better. Why don't we see if we can make this a decent game? Alright, so let's double the speed. Oh, that's a good start, Chris. So that Spectrum just didn't quite have the grunt of it. Plus the controls aren't great now. What did I say about driving on the left? It's not me, it's the controls. Right, so the issue we have here is the more you turn, it doesn't reset. So if you end up overcompensating all the time. Oh, that's the excuse I've made. I'm sticking with it. Oh dear me. So that's twice as fast. That's isn't it remarkable how much smoother the games run, just with a bit of overclocking? So obviously the processing makes sense. So the maths works. It's just obviously didn't have the power to make it. It couldn't shift the polygons fast enough because it didn't have the grunt. And I'm only running this at what, 14 megahertz. Let's push it to something ridiculous. Game over. That's funny. Game over. Right, okay. And it crashed. So yeah, that was a little bit of a rambling dive into some of the 3D games you get on the Spectrum. Great stuff. You know, when you think about what it was, a 3.5 megahertz system. Never designed for 3D, didn't have any sort of custom hardware acceleration for 3D, so wonderful stuff. Anyway, I've been All Your Base Chris. Thanks very much. Hope to see you again sometime. Toodle pip. Ciao.